Let's review my sales for March of 2016.
Not much.
I did 108 sales, and this past month, March, I did 132. There was a 24 sale increase from February to March, which I'm pretty excited about. As long as I'm growing, and I'm happy. Since March of last year, my sales have grown every month. Of course, the peak months, there's spikes in sales, so that's an abnormal count as far as I'm concerned. I'm talking more about the non-peak months. From February to July, and October is a little slow. The rest of the months have higher sales, so definitely August, September, and November, and December, of course, and of course January. Those 5 months are the best months of the year, and the other months, the other 7 months, are a little more average, not spectacular, basically. So 7 months out of the year are the months that I consider or look to for steady growth, because those are the months that are going to slow down, and you're going to have to make it through those months basically in between the peak months. Of the 132 sales, 108 of them were books, which is not a surprise, which is over 80%. And then there were 13 CD sales, or just under 10%. I'm a big fan of that, considering that it's not the holidays, and if I can sell those all year, that's great. It also helped that I sent in that CD lot, or about 70 CDs from that CD lot that I bought. 9 of the sales were VHS tapes, which is awesome as well. I apparently had 1 electronic sale, I don't remember what it was, and 1 video game sale. So mostly books, but I love that 22 of the items were VHS tapes and CDs. That's exciting. If you average the sales out over the 31 days, it comes to just over 4 sales a day, which is probably the most exciting thing to me, that in a non-peak month, I was able to get 4 sales a day. Of course, I wasn't getting every single day 4 sales. Some I had more, some I had less, and some I had exactly 4. But averaged out over the 31 days, came out to 4 a day, which is awesome. And I'm almost halfway to my biggest and most significant goal of 10 sales a day, which I am thinking will be happening in a year. So hopefully February, March of next year, I'll be hitting that goal of 10 sales a day, which is about 300 plus sales a month, which is basically full-time income, depending, where you live and whatnot. For me, 300 sales a month is going to be significant. It's going to be huge. It's going to be the first step towards turning this into a serious income. By serious, I mean something that can really potentially dramatically change things for our family and our household. I'm doing now definitely important, and I'm heading in the right direction. Everyone's situation is different, but I think, over $3,000 roughly a month is a significant amount of money, and I think that's gonna profoundly affect most people's lives and household, especially if it's extra money. What I'm doing with FBA is all extra, and that's why I'm saving it up and not spending it all. I've hardly spent any of it, to be honest. The thing with books and selling them on FBA is unless you are only sending in books that sell really quickly within about a month, your inventory is going to grow. That's how you're going to be able to build up a steady flow of sales, because books generally are going to take a little bit longer to sell. Wouldn't we all love to sell all of our items within a few weeks of them hitting the warehouses? Of course, but books just don't work that way. Unless you have a strict, quick turnover sales rank maximum for books, then you're going to have to wait a little bit to sell some of those books, but there's a lot more profit in those that you wait a little bit longer for, such as the book I just sold for $99. It wasn't that long, about 3.5 months to sell. Definitely was worth the wait, quote unquote wait. That's the thing I've been sort of obsessed about, is 2 things, is sending shipments every 2 weeks and that my sales grow every month. And I'm continuing to do that, and it's working. The bi-weekly shipments have had the biggest impact on my steady growth of sales. If I was able to send in even more items, then my sales would be even higher, of course, but I limited time to do it. I'm sending in what I can and sourcing as much as I can. So I hope that you look back on your sales month to month and see if they're growing and what kind of changes you can potentially make or improvements, because this business does require constant shipments and sourcing. Otherwise, you'll slowly run out of inventory. It's definitely a good idea to keep track of your sales and know if there's some growth or if slow down or if you flatlined or anything like that. If you're not seeing much growth in your sales, then my guess is you have not been sending in shipments consistently. I didn't start seeing growth until I was consistent with the shipments, no matter what the size, at least every 2 weeks. So that's at least, at this point, I'm getting over 100 in, closer to around 150 each time I send a shipment in every 2 weeks. So I'm getting closer to 250 to 300 every 4 weeks, which again, I mentioned in an earlier video, is not that much, but it's enabled me to grow my sales, and it's enabled me to have a steady growth in sales from month to month since last March. It feels great to get a shipment out, the one I just sent out on Monday. 3 of the boxes already hit the warehouse, and all of them are just about received, so that took only 2 days. The other box of 36 items is going all the way to Florida, so that's going to take a little bit longer, probably Friday or so it'll get there. It'll be nice to have over 120 items already live on Amazon's website so that I can start selling them and get some sales right away from that shipment. So that's the huge benefit of sending it in-state. Clearly it's cheaper, but the items get there right away. It's kind of a weird concept, right? The idea of sending your items to Amazon and they go live within a couple of days. Usually, for most people that I hear about, it takes a few days, takes more like 3 to 5 days before they even get to the warehouse. And then depending on the day of when they get there, you could have your items received that day, or if it's a weekend, not till Monday. But then at the same time, it feels great to get a shipment out. And of course, it feels great to get sales. But the way this business works is the more sales you get, the more items you have to send in. Which means my big first goal of selling 300 plus a month or 10 sales a day is right around what I'm sending in right now every 4 weeks. So around this time next year, if I am hitting those sales, I'm basically not going to have that much growth. I'm going to plateau, I would imagine, when I am selling the same amount per month that I am sending in. There probably won't be much growth after that unless or until I send in more items. So if I'm able to bump it up to maybe 200 a week or something like that, then my sales will probably continue to grow, because clearly if your inventory level doesn't grow, your sales aren't going to grow. That's the one downside to this business, I would say, is that items you sell, you can only sell once, right? They're physical items. There's only one copy. Unless you're doing Kindle books or some other type of digital product, then one product equals one sale, which is fine, right? As long as the profit margin is there. But you have to continue to source and continue to list and continue to ship. You basically have to do the same thing over and over and over and over again, which is why you have to like doing this. Which is why I like to get out there and find books, see what books I come across, what CDs, what VHS tapes, that sort of thing. I like that stuff. Not to mention the hunt and finding something that you buy for 50 cents to $1 and it sells for 10 to 15 or more times what you paid for it. Those are of course great, and doesn't matter what you're selling, making that great profit margin feels incredible. But it's something you have to continue to do. You can't stop sourcing once you have a lot of sales coming in, because your sales will go down. Depends on what you want to do. Perhaps you want to take a month off. Great, you can do that. But just know that you might have to source a little bit more once you start getting back at it. It depends what everybody's lifestyle is and how they want to work this business. And that's the great thing about it, is you can do it whenever you want. You can source on a Monday morning, you can source on a Monday evening, you can source on a Sunday morning, Friday night. It doesn't matter. You can list whenever you want, you can ship when you want, basically. It's very flexible once you get to a certain level, and if you're doing it full time. But of course, if you're doing it full time, you have to continue to source unless you have a significant savings, so that once the sales start to dwindle a little bit, if you took some time off, you won't feel like a big deal. Kind of went off course here with the video, but it all plays into checking your monthly sales, which is so important, which is why I do it every month. And I'll probably be making these monthly sales checkups at the beginning of each month about the previous month. Check in for those. Let me know if you've seen some growth in your sales since you started the business, or recently, or last month, or last few months. be interested to know. And also, you've been doing it for a while, longer than me. I've been at this just a little over a year and a half. Are your sales growing? Did you notice that you reached a plateau when you started selling a certain amount, that kind of thing? I would imagine there's a plateau when you're doing it by yourself because you can only source so much, even if you're doing it full time. If I was going out this like a maniac and sourcing 5-6 days a week and sending out, let's say 500, 600 books a week, which just seems crazy, but let's say I could do it. That's about 2,000 plus books every 4 weeks or every month. I'd be hitting my 10,000 limit in no time and selling crazy amount of books. But even then, at some point you are going to plateau. You're going to reach a certain level that you just can't go beyond it because you're only one person. If you find one other person to help you and do exactly what you're doing, then clearly you can double your efforts, but you got to pay that person, unless that person is your significant other or family member, or who knows, whatever setup you have. But more than likely, you're going to have to pay that person to do that. So that's a whole nother conversation down the road. And I know a lot of people do pay people to source for them so that they can duplicate their efforts. As always, remember, keep booking.